Thank you very much for coming back to the Voice of Job Seekers podcast. This is Mark, and I'm here to help you hack and reimagine the job search. Of course, the betterment for you. If you have any questions about the Voice of Job Seekers podcast, you can always go to thevoiceofjobseekers.com. You will find a lot of content there, not only audio and video, but lots of articles. You can always press the send voicemail button on your right-hand side to listen, or better yet, to speak your mind about the topic that we're talking about today. Or you can always go to Mark at thevoiceofjobseekers.com, email me. You can also call 708-365-9822 to also text me if you'd like, or you can leave a voicemail there as well. Today I have back on the show Melissa Dobbins. How are you, Melissa?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me back.
Sure. Melissa is the founder and CEO of Career Place, whose purpose is to remove bias from hiring. And today I wanted to dig into an article that she recently wrote on her own blog, and it kind of goes along with some of the subjects that I'll be writing about here very soon with a past guest. And I thought this would kind of give another perspective. Her career.place website, and it's exactly that, career.place, as it sounds. Her article is, "I'm sorry, Dave, I'm afraid I can't do that. Save us from our technology." And I think she has a pretty unique take on how technology is supposedly going to help make us advancements in removing bias from the hiring process. So I want to give her a little chance to talk about it a little bit in depth here. And again, I'll put the link in the show notes, and I hope that you'll go and read it as we discuss it as well. So, Melissa, you're ready to dive in?
Absolutely.
Okay. And folks, when she says she is, I have to hold the reins a little bit because she can take quite a deep dive. So we are at this crossroads now where we talk about diversity and inclusion quite a bit. We talk about how technology could be quite a key in helping removing bias from the hiring process. It is becoming, it is not as easy as people think it is, but I think what it is people are wondering, is that dime that they're going to spend on that kind of technology, is it really going to do what it says it's going to do? And maybe you can give us a little bit of insight, because, the program is as good as the programmer. Did I say that right?
Yes. So with artificial intelligence, with AI, one of the first things to think about is what it actually is. Mm-hmm. So in the market, there's a lot of solutions that are touting AI. Mm-hmm. Some of them absolutely have a version of AI or something that can be under that umbrella. Others are a bit of a marketing ploy. So the first thing to do if you are on the buying side of a solution is just understand what's actually there. Forget the terminology, forget what they're calling it in the fancy marketing material. Ask a bunch of questions. Mm-hmm. What's the technology doing and how is it doing it? And that will get to a root of a lot of the challenges that we're seeing. Mm-hmm. Because if you understand what's happening, you can start to peel that onion back and see if it is in fact doing as it claims.
Now, you gave a good example of how technology can work or work against us in your article. You mentioned the Terminator, which I thought is because the whole idea there is to have bias against the bad guys who are trying to disrupt and take over the world. So you definitely there needs to be that good bias, if we can call it that, if there's such a thing, in the sense that it can be a way to use it for good. But that's something that's, of course, that's overboard. But I think it accentuates the point that there's a lot of different points of bias where the technology is going to confront that it doesn't know about it. And this is bad English, but how do it know?
It's a great question. So let's take a look at an example that unfortunately is not in science fiction, where I do love to pull a lot of examples, but is in the news. And take a look at Amazon. So Amazon recently announced that it was stopping with one of its algorithms, hiring algorithms, because it had gender bias.
Right.
Did Amazon intend to put bias in its algorithm? Absolutely not. That's why they're pulling it from use, and that's fantastic. And we should be praising them for taking that step. Now, how did it end up that way? Well, the scenario is that they have, as many tech companies do, a predominantly male environment. Many of their engineers are men. So when they went through the process of profiling their top performers, just by statistics of how many people in their company doing these roles were men, ending up with data sets of men. So what happens when you profile a particular demographic group? You're going to end up with a bunch of traits from that group. So now we have to ask the question, how many of those traits are actually correlated to them being top performers versus are patterns that are irrelevant? And that's the first level. So is it all performers have a certain trait, or most men have a certain trait, and so it ended up on that same list? In which case you have enough of those, and other demographics, in this case women, are going to start being excluded because of they're not matching with that group of traits. So that's that first layer, and that's a layer that we should all be cognizant of as we use approaches that are not uncommon, like profiling top performers. Is our company already diverse enough, whatever diversity means in that company, so that they are profiling from a diverse group and they're not ending up with demographic-based traits? That's the first thing. The second thing to do is taking another step back and asking, are my top performers the type of performers I need in the future of my business? So, for example, if you're in a business that is looking to diversify, and there's all sorts of data out there on why that is a very good idea, because when you start creating diverse environments, and that's different ways of thinking, different backgrounds, different demographics, all mixed together, you start looking like the people you're selling to. And therefore you understand the dynamic and diverse problem set that your solution, that your product is solving. And you can better sell, better resonate with your market. And that's just one of many reasons why. So if you're moving in that direction, then somebody who's a top performer of today might not be your top performer of tomorrow. So now you're trying to copy what you have today rather than look to what you need in the future. And AI is not smart enough to tell the difference. It is pattern recognition and then application.
Now,
so that's the second piece, and we can keep going.
Well, what I want to do was just kind of add on to maybe even an example. I pulled up the article we were talking about before we got on the air, where we talked about LinkedIn's algorithm, how it reflects gender bias. So they they say it may reflect gender bias. So we'll put it that way. We're not trying to accuse anyone. But its bias just changes, like search for Andrea Jones to Andrew Jones, Danielle to Daniel, or Michaela to Michael, or Alexa to Alex. And I just thought that is such a slight different. In other words, it will include Andrea and Andrew, and may even include most of the results for Andrew if you're looking for Andrea Jones. And I thought that's a subtle bias, but can you imagine what our brain does when we read those
Mm-hmm.
particular results? And I think that's where uh, uh, part of the quandary is. The algorithm does one way, but it can play a trick on us with our brain because it adds out we add our own bias now. So I'll accidentally go to Andrews instead of Andrea's. And that's one of the ways. But I think ultimately we're even talking about to a very fine science, and how do we kind of. I'm asking, in one sense, what would technology would do, but how do
Mm-hmm.
we change the mind of the user? It is
Yes.
something that's going to be kind of impossible, but where can we draw the balance at?
Yeah, and it very much is that dual problem because the technology is executing extremely well on what it's being told to execute.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't know what's going on behind the data of that LinkedIn example, but I can make a guess. I can guess that based on their existing data set and their attempt at trying to make sure you don't misspell or not find people because of misspellings, that they look at all of the variations of the word Alex and they start bringing up all of these variations that you might have meant because there's such a dominating Alex versus Alexandra in their database. And
Mm-hmm.
so it wasn't intentional as much as the data was very heavy in one direction versus another.
Mm-hmm.
Just like if you were going to have a very male-dominated organization and then you try to measure what the best traits are, they're going to be male-dominated traits.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not that they intended to do this as much as when you collect that data and then you put it through an algorithm without understanding what that data is, what you're going to get out on the other side can be inherently biased. And even worse than that sense of I meant one name and I got another, I meant a woman and I got a man, but if all your results or 90% of your results are men in this particular example, it starts giving you the sense that it's a very male-dominated world.
Right.
And that is also detrimental, as you said, from the psychology standpoint, when you're interacting with a business social media such as LinkedIn.
Right.
So when it comes to the human versus the machine, it's very tricky because we know we have the problem of unconscious bias.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So we don't even know we're doing it, but we all are. It's psychologically part of all of us.
Mm-hmm.
And so then we're mechanizing it. So then we're saying, well, it's not us, it's the machine, and taking ourselves out of the equation, which is not true. And that gives us an excuse and allows us the ignorance that the problem is persisting.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where we have to draw the line. And at first, we need to say that this is something that we own. Not that there's a magic bullet solution, but if we are aware of the problem, we can continue to take steps to solve it.
Yeah.
The other thing, and this was a piece of advice that I got in my career from an executive, and I use it all the time, and it was so simple at the time.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't understand why he was doing it. But now throughout my career, over and over again, yep, that really helps.
Yeah.
Why?
Mm-hmm.
Simply always, always, always ask why. And I'll give you an example.
Mm-hmm.
If you are creating a job requirement, you're talking about what you need in a candidate to be successful. You look around at all other candidates. I need someone who's an aggressive go-getter. Well, okay, great. Not always tends to be a more masculine trait. Why? And you got to step back. Well, I need an aggressive go-getter because this is an aggressive team.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And why? Because that's how you get stuff done. And as you continue to move down this why, now you can ask yourself a different question. Is it really someone who's an aggressive go-getter that you need to be successful? Maybe in that environment, you actually need a negotiator. Or you need someone who's inspirational, someone who can inspire all of these aggressive go-getters to go get stuff in the same direction. Mm-hmm. Or maybe you need someone with hyper organization skills so that with all this go-getting, you're still getting to the goal. Yeah. And when you start going down that path, suddenly you take a single trait and you question the why rather than copying it. And AI doesn't do that. AI stops the trait. in the context of how it's being used for unbiased hiring.
Well, you made a point and I'm kind of moving on, but I hope to address what you just said. It kind of leads to the section of your article where it says the road to hiring hell is paved with good intentions. And that I think everybody gets that part, but a good negotiator often is not going to look for the why, and it's going to look for the what and how. So, is technology going to be smart enough to differentiate between the two? You know what I'm saying?
Yes. And I wrote an earlier piece that you probably enjoy as well around AI. And it was basically talking about how AI is not fully functional, reference to data of Star Trek Next Generation.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, I love pulling my references from science fiction.
Yeah, we get it now.
You use a great question, just in the way that you phrase the question, is our technology smart enough? Now let's stop. Stop.
Well, does it have breadth? Maybe that's really what I'm asking.
Humans are the ones who need to be smart enough. Technology is a tool. We do not have Terminators. We do not have data. We have, as in the robot, we have tools that can augment the processes that we put into place, that can look for patterns faster than we can. They can do tasks at a faster, more efficient rate. If we have them do the correct tasks, they're augmenting. If we have them doing the incorrect tasks, then we're causing problems. But the intelligence, the smart enough, has to come from us, which is why it goes back to the question, what is the AI doing? Whatever the claim is, look under the curtain. What is it doing? What data is it collecting? How is it weighing that data? What is the patterns it's looking for? Because it is up to us to understand how the tool is being wielded. It's not going to be smart enough to know if it's doing it right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, we can't gauge on, someone's intentions for sure. Or we can if all the results and patterns show that there is an issue. Again, we're going back to LinkedIn's example, which I think it should add some insight to the reader who's even just reading about it for the first time, is that it's mixing in the results of Stephen and Stephanie, as opposed, but you asked for Stephen. Now, it's not like Google where if you put quotes around it, it's just going to give you the results for Stephanie. If those of you who do Google searches, if you put quotes around, I don't know if you knew this, you put quotes around your search subject, it's supposed to give you the best results for all of that, just that subject, instead of the mixed results, of Stephanie and Stephen. You should get all Stephanie, at least for the first 100 results, if there's such a thing. So, I think the intent here is kind of is right now is skewed. You're saying that we're looking for the better of the half, not that we should expect to get the whole thing.
Yeah, and I'm probably a bit optimistic, but my general feel is people intend to be biased. They don't intend to create problems for certain demographic groups or certain individuals. They are trying to solve problems. In the case of LinkedIn, my assumption is that they're trying to make sure you find the people you're trying to network with. So if you're like me, you might make a lot of spelling mistakes. I do. I spell things wrong all the time. I hear a name, I think I got it, not so much. And so it has an algorithm that, based on its probably data set behind the scenes, it's trying to help you find that individual. It's not trying to lead you astray. It's back to the data underneath it. If the data underneath it is weighted in one direction or another, the results are going to reflect that weighting. And that's probably what ended up happening. So it had nothing to do with intention. So you take this over to Amazon, and that example that was having the problems with bias, gender bias, it was the exact same thing. I don't think Amazon set out to not hire women. I don't think that crossed their mind when they went through this project.
Mm-hmm.
They were trying to find the best people in their organization and replicate that so that they created an organization of amazing employees. We all want that. Everybody who works in any business wants to be surrounded by and hire amazing employees. The natural thing we're going to do is look at people we already think are amazing and find them.
Yeah.
So if your data set all looks the same or all has similar traits, we're just going to keep hiring them over and over again. We're actually just mechanizing the bias that has existed in hiring this entire time. We just didn't realize that that's what we were doing.
Yeah. I think, too, just from a practical standpoint, I mean, for people come to this podcast mainly for strategies, and they look for, actionable items that they can put into practice right after. And this is one of the podcasts where that's not my intent in creating this particular show. This is to kind of give an idea of what we're looking at on how, search ultimately from an employer standpoint, it's going to affect them in their endeavors. And some of them are probably still thinking that I still got to use my nickname instead of my real name, or that I've got to use, instead of using Charlene, I'm going to use Charlie to still rank a little higher on those search results. And I think that, that's a pretty important piece of it, because at this particular time, and you may agree, we're probably a little long ways from making those subtle changes more of a reality, though you may chime in and say, but it's not that hard.
Well, in some sense, and it breaks my heart to say it, I think you're right, that we're in this world that has so many filters, so many automated systems that are trying to sift through that data, that if we inadvertently trigger one of those, we'll be shoved aside. And there are a lot of them, they're not fair. They're just not fair. Mm-hmm. But on the other side, there are lessons that we can all take coming out of this. One of the things that is clear is that there are patterns that people are looking for. They're looking for patterns that they recognize.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean they're right. As an applicant, if you come into a job interview, part of what you're doing is showing them why you are a great fit. You don't need to follow their rules, but if you can connect the dots for them, and no, you don't need the aggressive go-getter. What you need is the inspirer. What you need is someone like me who can get up in front of the group and get them excited to go in the same direction rather than butt heads with them. Then you're helping to connect those dots and break the cycle. And it's a small difference, but it can make a huge difference for that individual hiring manager, for you as you go through your job searches, and in starting to break this cycle.
Or you just disrupt it completely and just get referred and figure out ways to get referred. And that's just really the honest truth what we're looking at right now at this very minute. If I need a chance, if I want a chance, and if I want a fair chance in a lot of ways, but you're kind of skipping the line in a fair way is to get a referral, which most employees are encouraged to do, because there's the little incentive that's often offered to do that. So, Melissa, thank you so much for being a part of the show today, and love your article. And again, you guys, if you want to Google it, or you can go to show notes. I'm sorry, Dave, I'm afraid I can't do that. Save us from our technology. That's on the career.place website and blog, and you can go there to read that article. And I'll have some other articles that we mentioned as part of the show notes. In the meantime, thank you very much. And again, what's the best place to find you, Melissa?
You can come to our website, just as you said, www.career.place. You can also find me on LinkedIn. And as you said, my name is Melissa Dobbins. And if you search my name, you might get a few Melvins, but I'm here too.
That's this is very interesting. Well, thank the rest of you for coming and listening to the show. We'll be back in a couple of weeks to have another show. We're coming at this particular time that this show will air. Will be coming near the closing of the last couple of episodes. In the meantime, we'll talk a little bit more about that. And at this particular time, too, you should be able to download the 219 job search tips that are already on my site, and that's a freebie if you have been, and you'll join the mailing list as well once you get that and you download that. Thanks so much. We'll look forward to seeing you next week.